We're going to learn first a letter of the Rebbe that the Rebbe wrote on Lag BaOmer, Tavshim Mem Aleph, 1981. And the title they gave in the Sefer called Shari Amoidim to this letter was Mitzvah L'Smayach Simchas Rashbi. It's a mitzvah to rejoice with the Simcha of Reb Shimon ben Yochai. So the Rebbe begins Baruch Hashem Lag BaOmer Vaver Shabbos Kodesh Parshas B'Chol. So it was also on a Friday that year, but it was not a Friday of Parshas Emor, it was Parshas B'Chol Shnas Hakel, it was a year of Hakel, Tovshim Mem Aleph, Brooklyn, New York, Shalom Bracha. And the Rebbe is addressing someone's letter, and he's saying, Michtavei Niskabel V'Tshuas Chen. His letter was, I'm a receipt of his letter, and thank you for it. And the Rebbe tells this person, this individual, is standing in the great day of the Simcha of the Rashbi. In other words, it's not just an ordinary Simcha, it's a great Simcha. Asher Basa Reisha Gufa Azel. There is an expression in Chazal that the body follows the head. This has to do with halachic ramifications. If a person is sitting in a sukkah and they have their head outside the sukkah, so we'd not consider, even though the majority of his body is in the sukkah, it's considered that he follows the head, and since his head is outside of the sukkah, he hasn't fulfilled the obligation of sitting in the sukkah. So the same thing the Rebbe always applies this concerning Nasi Yisrael, that the leaders of Klal Yisrael, they are our heads, and we follow them. The Rebbe says, like the well-known expression, mitzvah l'smoyach simchas rashbi. This is an expression brought down from one of the Talmidim of the Arizal, that it's a mitzvah to rejoice with the Simcha of the Rashbi. And in the footnotes he brings from the Zohar about how the Rashbi himself was rejoicing on his day of his yahrzeit. Let's look at the moment in footnote number 5, if you could make it out, the small words. It says, Shaychus, I'll just blow it up for your benefit. Shaychus Simchas Rashbi, Simcha Rashbi B'chlal. What is the connection of joy to Reb Shimon ben Yochai in general? So the Rebbe points to the Friedike Rebbe Sichas. Re'elu kute diburim chele gimel. The Friedike Rebbe is saying that in the Holy Land they would say, Miron is a freilacher oihel chulu. Miron is a happy oihel meaning a tent, but what it means is it's a happy caver, it's a happy gravesite. Rashbi is a freilacher Rebbe. The Rashim Yochai is a happy Rebbe. Miron hu oil sameach, Rashbi hu Rebbe sameach, he translates into Hebrew. It sounds a little bit strange, but in other places the Rebbe explains, I think in the name of the Friedike Rebbe, that there are certain grave sites of tzaddikim that is more uplifting and a happy place, and there's certain tzaddikim which is the opposite. It brings a person to more of Yisayris Tshuva and seriousness and so on. So therefore, the Rebbe is emphasizing how the oil of the Rashbi, which is Miron, is a happy oil. It's a joyous place, and the Rashbi is a joyous Rebbe. B'chlal, we should realize this is such an amazing concept, because there are many different restrictions on what we may and may not do in a Jewish cemetery. One of the things is that one may not act in a very loose, frivolous manner. And yet, despite the fact that frivolity and seemingly joy is something that we are not supposed to do in a cemetery in general, but when it comes to the Rashbi, we're busy singing and dancing all around his gravesite, because that had a very unique power of that day, and especially being someone that's joyous in general, not just on the day of Lag BaOmer. Now he brings a very interesting word. I think some of our students over here will enjoy it, about a certain association. So he says, still in the middle of the footnote, in the Tur on Shulchan Aruch Orach Chaim on chapter 428. He says, quote, La'olam b'yoim sheyihya Purim yihya Lag ba'omer. You can always know that the day of the week that Purim falls will be the day when Lag ba'omer falls. In other words, this year it's Friday. V'siman Peleg Chai. Peleg Chai, what is that? The Siman Pirush. It means Purim Lag. In other words, Purim comes out on Lamed Gimel of the Omer, Chai Be'ir. The Rebbe also points to his father's letters about this. Okay, let's go back into the text of the actual letter, the second paragraph in the actual letter itself. The Kivin should see since this commandment, this mitzvah that the Arizal says it's a mitzvah to rejoice with the joy of the Rashbi, is something that's said in the Torah of Truth. And it's not only in the Torah of Truth, but as we said before, it's said by one of the students of the Arizal in a sefer called Mishnas Chassidim, which is teaches the inner parts of the Torah. Bevadai asher gam hasimcha hipnimius. So for sure, the simcha is not just external, but it's an internal simcha. It's real. In other words, it's not just something that we are faking or just doing externally, but it has no truth inside of us, but it's something that is internal and real and part of us. But it doesn't just remain internal. Haba begoli. It also comes out into a revealed way. Until there's even a custom that's brought down in Shulchan Aruch that one adds in joy on that day. In other words, it's not just an internal aspect of joy, and it's not just that we do not recite Tachnun on that day and so on, but we have to do something special to add in the joy of that day. And also, not only is it Pnimius, V'gama mitis. It's real, it's true, because it's part of Torah Simcha, so therefore it has to be a true Simcha. Meaning, so the Rebbe gives a very simple concept over here. Hainu shakadosh baruch hu mamid is called echad ve'echad. Hashem places every single person b'matzav hamsameach es hanefesh v'saguf gam yochad, in a situation, in a state that will make both his soul and his body together be joyous. In other words, Hashem gives us the things and the opportunities to be joyous. Next page in the letter, the Rebbe goes on and says, "V'gam mitzad matzav ha'olam," even from the perspective of the state of the world. When we look at the world around us, it seems to be that it needs a salvation. It needs to be saved. It's in a very terrible situation. So he says, still in all, the day of Lag BaOmer affects salvations within the earth. The Rebbe is quoting a pasuk that the Alter Rebbe uses when he speaks about the yahrzeit of a tzaddik, that on the yahrzeit of a tzaddik, it's not just a great thing for the tzaddik, that the tzaddik goes up higher and higher in the spiritual world, but the Alter Rebbe says in Tanya that the yahrzeit of a tzaddik, it permeates and affects, and it brings salvations into this world. Especially the one whose yahrzeit is, in other words, the Rashbi, is known for the miraculous. So therefore, since he's known for the miraculous, so he continues on the day of his yahrzeit, especially affecting and bringing down miracles in this world. And we know also that the Rashbi connects himself with the entire world, lefoitrim and adin, to release them from judgment, v'chulu, like we learned in the Sicha in the beginning of this week, on Sunday, that the Rashbi said that I have the capability to make sure that no one in the world is judged in a negative way. So we see this connection that the Rashbi has with the entire world. And it's known, the hint for this, in the famous Maimer Chazal, Kedayu Rab Shimon Lismech Allah B'Shas Adchak. Rab Shimon is worthy to be relied on in times of difficulty, which the simple meaning of this Maimer Chazal is, also we mentioned this on Sunday, is that if there is a difficult halachic decision, and to be able to get out of the quandary, there's an opinion of Rab Shimon, we could rely on Rab Shimon's opinion to extricate us from that difficulty. But there is a hint in that Maimer Chazal that it also means extracting ourselves from the difficulty of the times. The Rashbi is powerful enough to take us out. B'shas adchak, the Rebbe says, is doichik v'chosh chagolus. The difficulties and the darkness of the exile, that the Rashbi is worthy to be able to extract us from that difficulty. Especially in the most latest years of the heels of Mashiach, and therefore the Rashbi can and will do that. Now we're going to learn part of a Sicha of the Rebbe from the year Tafshin Mem Hey, where the Rebbe says that this day of rejoicing is, even though it seems to be a private day of joy for the Rashbi, Rab Shimon ben Yochai has an aliyas, neshama, that's what happens on a yard site, and that's why it's a day of rejoicing, but it's something that's a rejoicing for the whole Klal Yisrael. Yom Simchasi the Rashbi, Simchas Klal Yisrael, the day of rejoicing of Rab Shimon ben Yochai is the rejoicing of all Yidden. So the Rebbe begins, Aleph Lag BaOmer, Hu Yom Simchasi Shel Rashbi. Lag BaOmer is the day of the rejoicing of the Rashbi. Simcha Gedoyla BeYoser, a great joy. Uba Begilui Eitzel Kol Hashayachim Elav, that comes out in a revealed state by all of those that have an association with the Rashbi. Ki Yadua, as it's known, Sheratza, that the Rashbi wanted, Vitziva, and the Rashbi commanded, Shekol Hashayachim Elav Yismechu B'Simchasai, they should rejoice in his happiness, in his day of rejoicing, meaning in his yard site. It's also related in the Arizal's writings. There was one of the students of the Arizal that was very upset and very torn apart about the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash, and because of that, every day he would say in Shemoneh Esrei the tefillah where we ask Hashem to comfort us, called Nachim, which we only recite on Tisha B'Av. But he, because he felt the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash so much, he would recite it every day, or at least every day of the week, Shabbos and Yom Tov not. So just like he recited it on every day, he once, one of these students of the Arizal, recited it even on Lag BaOmer. And the Arizal told this student of his, Shehikbid Olav Rashbi, that the Rashbi was upset about that student, Al Sha'amar Nachim B'Lag BaOmer, that he said this mournful tefillah on Lag BaOmer, Yom Simchasei, the day of the Rashbi's rejoicing. That's how much the Rashbi felt strongly that this day should be a day of rejoicing, that even someone that's can't hold himself back every day of the year, he's upset about the destruction of Beis HaMikdash. Even a person of such a great spiritual stature, and it matters to him so much, but when it comes to the day of the rejoicing of the Rashbi, that's inappropriate to say that tefillah. So now the Rebbe said, earlier he said that this joy is supposed to be in a revealed way by all of those that are associated with the Rashbi. So now the Rebbe is going to identify who are those that are associated with the Rashbi. So he says in the second paragraph, who are those that are associated with Rashbi, and therefore they need to rejoice with his Simcha. So the Rebbe emphasizes, italics over here, Kol Echad ve'echad miYisrael. Every single Jew is associated with the Rashbi, and therefore every single Jew must rejoice with his happiness in this day of his happiness on Lag BaOmer. Rashbi said, quote, Yachlani lifters kol ha'olam kulim and adin. I have the capability to release the entire world from judgment. Kiloimar, this means to say, afilu doir hanimtza b'matzav yorud, even a generation that finds itself in a low spiritual state. Shalachein zoko kulein shakapara. Therefore, it's necessary for that generation to have some type of atonement. Va'ad kedei kach God la'eridon. To such a great degree was the descent. Shloi maspika zechusim shel hatzadikim bedargedim shnayim hem aniu bonai. It's not even enough the merit of tzadikim that are on the level. If they are two, it's me and my son. Let me introduce this topic before we go on further. The Rashbi said, Ra'isi b'nei aliyah, I've seen people that are of an elevated status, and the Alter Rebbe in Tanya explains what exactly b'nei aliyah is. It's a very high level of a tzaddik gomor and a tzaddik v'toivle, etc., etc. And the Rashbi said, if there are only two b'nei aliyah, so then the two b'nei aliyah is me, the Rab Shimon ben Yochai, and my son Rebbe Lazar. And if there's only one, he said, then it's only myself, tzaddik yisoid olam. The tzaddik is the foundation of the world that the whole world stands upon. Now, when the Rashbi said, I am able to release the entire world from judgment, he did not say, I and my son are able to do so. Meaning, we're talking about the world is in such a state where even the power of another tzaddik, like Rebbe Lazar, the son of Reb Shimon, was not something that could do it. It would need only the singular power of the Rashbi. So let's go on further in the third paragraph on this page, right after the numeral 3. There is a necessity for a much greater merit. I'm saying, I think it's a printing mistake. I think maybe it's supposed to say im chad va'anahu. If there's only one that's considered a bnei aliyah, it's I am that one. The chsiv, as it said, it says v'tzadik yisoid olam, that the tzaddik is a foundation upon whom the world stands. So even when it's necessary that only someone that is of a singular stature of being a tzaddik yisoid olam, that's how low the world is, that they need to have such a type of tzaddik to save them. Even in such a state and situation, Reb Shimon ben Yochai says, I can release the entire world from judgment. So the Rebbe says it's not just that the Rashbi is saying what he can do, but he does do it. Second paragraph from the bottom, moving it's understood. When Rashbi says, I can release, surely the Rashbi uses this capability that he was given. This corresponds to what it says that everything Hashem created in this world, He didn't create even one thing for nothing. Meaning, if the Hashem gave the Rashbi this capability to release the entire world from judgment, this means that the Rashbi is actually going to use this capability. It's not something that he's just going to let pass and not use it. This the Rebbe always emphasizes. If we're given a certain power, capability, potential, skill, talent, we're supposed to use it, or else we are making that Hashem's creation was for nothing. So therefore, he for sure uses this power, to bring it from potential that he's not just able to the actual, that he actually releases the generation from judgment. In my merit, I will carry all their sins, upoitron minadin, and I will release them from judgment. So therefore, what do we see? That the Rashbi is connected with the entire generation, if he could release them from their judgment. Last line on this page, since Reb Shimon ben Yochai binds himself with every single person of his generation, to be able to release them from judgment, chulum, harei bazeh gufa mudgeshes shaychusam shel kol bnei adorim Rashbi. So on this itself is emphasized the connection of all the members of the generation with Reb Shimon ben Yochai. Therefore, all have to rejoice in his day of Simcha, because we are all connected with him because of how he takes care of us. Base, we can add to this. In addition to what we said, that all the members of the generation have to rejoice with the joy of the Rashbi because of their connection with him. Because Reb Shimon ben Yochai connects himself with the generation. Also, the content of the matter, that in it is expressed the connection of Reb Shimon ben Yochai with all the members of his generation, lefoitron minadin, to release them from judgment, maybe l'dei simcha g'doila, that itself brings to a great joy. Shekein ein lacha simcha g'doila mezu sheniftarim mikol inyanim bilti ritzuyim. There's no greater joy from the fact that they are released from all untoward things, negative things. In other words, the Rebbe says that the Rashbi could have expressed his connection with the generation in many different things. Which connection with his generation that the Rashbi expressed it in? He expressed it specifically with the idea of releasing the generation from judgment. So therefore, this itself causes a powerful joy, because what can be a greater joy than having any negative things removed from us? And the means how he does it is also a reason for an amazing type of joy. Especially the means through which they are released from judgment is through the most highest things, the merit of Reb Shimon ben Yochai, which is tzaddik yisoid olam. He is the tzaddik upon whom the world stands on. Especially since Reb Shimon ben Yochai said this and proclaims this in a revealed way. It's not just a private thing. Rashbi said this. It's in the Gemara. It says this openly, an open Maimer Chazal. V'dvar of Nasim chelik meTorah shebal peh, Torah's Chaim. His words became part of the oral Torah, the Torah of life, which means Torah's Chaim means Torah from the word Hayra'ah, lesson, b'chaim, in life. In other words, when the Rashbi tells us that he is able to release the world from judgment, it's part of Torah, and Torah is a lesson. Therefore, since it's a lesson, it's meant to teach us something. What is it meant to teach us? The Rebbe says that we should rejoice with the Rashbi on his day of happiness. And along with this, it's the Torah of truth, which means it's surely so that the Rashbi will and does release us from any judgment. All of the above adds and causes to increase even more so on the matters of joy. That is one point of what the Rashbi accomplishes for us. Now also, it also helps the bond as well. So too, on the other hand, 3 paragraphs in the bottom, it adds even more so in the bond and the association of the members of the generation with Reb Shimon ben Yochai, in addition to the very fact that the Rashbi connects himself with the generation to release them, there's another aspect that creates over here a bond between the people of the generation with the Rashbi. The effect of Rab Shimon ben Yochai to release them from judgment is by his way, meaning in what he is known for to do. In a way of from above to below through Torah. This is what we brought down, that the Rashbi, and also we spoke about this on Sunday, or on Monday perhaps. On Monday we spoke about this Namaimer, that the Rashbi, through saying the Torah on the Pasuk, he brought down from above to below whatever the world needed. And even more so, B'Torah Gufa Pnimis HaTorah, especially that the effect of the Rashbi to release the world from judgment is not just in Torah itself, but the inner part of the Torah, Nishmasa Deraisa, the soul of the Torah, because that's what he was known for, Rab Shimon ben Yochai, to teach and reveal the inner part of the Torah, with the Sefer HaZohar. Biyachadim Nigla the Torah. He taught that he was also known for his teachings in the revealed part of the Torah. Rashi is one of the Tanoim of the Mishnah and the halachas of the revealed part of the Torah. Since this is so, that the Rashbi does so and affects this with his Torah, both the Pnimius and the revealed part of the Torah, this adds and strengthens even more so the bond of all the people of the generation with Rab Shimon ben Yochai, because the bond that comes through his Torah is in a way of an unbelievable unity, like the Alter Rebbe explains in Tanya Perek Hey, that the unity that a Yid has with Hashem through the Torah is a much greater unity than through mitzvahs. In a similar vein, when we are studying the Rashbi's Torah, we are studying the inner part of the Torah, and we're studying the revealed part of the Torah. So our unity with him and his unity with us is in a powerful way. And therefore, the Yidden have an even greater connection with the joy of Rab Shimon ben Yochai. And the Rebbe concludes, moving from all of the above, it's understood that in this day of Lag BaOmer, davar pashut, it's an obvious, simple thing, shetrichim kulam liyos b'simcha g'dayla, that all have to be with in a state of a great joy. Umekiven shesimcha peretzes gather, since we know that joy breaks through boundaries and barriers. Kol inyan shel simcha. That's true by any aspect of joy. Ubalachas kama v'kama simcha gedoyla kazu. How much more so when we're dealing with such a great joy, the joy of, like we said before, the joy of the Rashbi being releasing us from judgment and so on. Surely it breaks through all the boundaries and all the measurements and limitations. And like the Rebbe concludes in many of the Sichas on Lag BaOmer, that the Simcha breaks through the ultimate barrier and limitation, breaks through the barriers of Golus, that we will be meriting to be and experience the Geula with Mashiach speedily right away.